Hello everyone, it's Paola and welcome to a new Theater Thursday video. Today I wanted to get a little bit more personal-ish with this video. As you can tell by the title, today I am going to talk about my relationship with Rent, the musical by Jonathan Larson. So Rent and I have a bit of a complicated relationship. Basically, it all started in 2013 when one of my friends from a Catholic youth group told us that he was doing Rent and he knew I liked musical theater, so he was like, do you want to do it with me? And I was like, sure, fine, let's do it. And so after our Catholic school thing, we went to where they were doing the production, and it was all about like getting ourselves familiar with what the production company wanted out of us and out of Rent as a whole. So they gave us like the schedule and everything, and unfortunately that didn't work out because at the time I was being homeschooled, and because of how the system works in Mexico, I was taking my exams on the weekends, and that production was holding rehearsals on the weekends. But yeah, that's besides the point. And I also forgot to mention that I said yes to being a part of Rent, even though I had no idea what Rent was. Before I knew that I wouldn't be able to join the production, I'm spoiling everything. I spoiled everything from the very beginning. Oh well. I got home and I watched the live recording that Netflix had up at the time of the last performance of Rent on Broadway. Suffice to say that I didn't love the musical, partly because I thought it was too long, but also because I just didn't really get it. I was 17 years old, which I guess it's not like a valid excuse to not getting what Rent is about. But yeah, I was 17 and I didn't really love it. I loved the music, which is weird to say about a musical. Isn't it weird when you like don't like the story but you like individual songs of a musical that are supposed to carry the story along? Anyway, years later I started to develop a more fond love for musical theater that started with watching The Last 5 Years with Anna Kendrick and Jeremy Jordan, and that whole movie, and sort of like doing my research of who Jason Robert Brown was, of who Anna Kendrick was, of who Jeremy Jordan was. I was like deep in a rabbit hole of Broadway, and somewhere along the way I got back to Rent, and I think I watched the movie and I actually enjoyed it. I don't think it's a terrible adaptation. I do think that it leaves a lot out, but I think it did what it had to do. I don't know. I will leave a link to Lindsay Ellis's video on why she hates Rent so much, because I think those concerns are very, very valid, and that's also part of like my complicated relationship with Rent. I wasn't like conscious enough of me not caring that much. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, I wanted to explore my feelings on Rent. And coincidentally, Rent was making its way to Mexico. I believe it was 2016, maybe it started before, I don't know, but I found out that there was a Mexican production of Rent happening in Mexico, and it wasn't all that expensive. It wasn't as expensive as other things, so I was like, maybe I can ask for that as a Christmas gift and I'll get it. And luckily enough, I got the opportunity to see it. Before I went to see it, I was already building up my expectations, because this is how the Rent cast in Mexico looked like in 2016, which is all sorts of bad. This casting was it's flawed, to say the least, because this is how the original cast of Rent looked like, and this is how the closing cast of Rent looked like, and this is how Fox's production of Rent looked like. So you see a lot of color, a lot of flavor, and then you see the Mexican cast of 2016 and it's like, I think you're missing the point of Rent. And I think that's a really big issue in Mexico. I think producers and in general people expect Mexicans to see something and just, I don't know, enjoy it just because it is Mexican, when it's not the point. Like, it's not just because it's the Mexican production of Rent I'm supposed to see it and be like, wow, it's so incredible that they are doing this. No, Rent is about racial diversity and, yeah, sexual identity diversity as well. But this cast just left me with a bad taste in my mouth. To be honest, it wasn't bad at all. I actually was interested in the Mexican production because of how bad the Mexican production of 1999 was. Not because of the casting, I mean, that was one of the problems, but because the translation, the adaptation of the lyrics was terrible. It was just so bad. I will leave a link to both like versions of Rent in Spanish, and I think just immediately from listening to it, you don't even have to understand Spanish to see just how bad it was. And I will also leave a link to the Mexican 1999 version of La Vie Boheme. The guy who played Mark had like this very big kind of operatic voice. Is that the term that you use? It sounded like he could play Phantom of the Opera, and that's just not the feeling that I get from Mark. Back to 2016. The voices were cool. Everyone was doing great, except for the girl who played Mimi. I thought she was very exaggerated. I will leave a link to her rendition of Out Tonight down below so that you can see for yourself. But I just think that Mimi is supposed to be like playful and, you know, flirtatious and blah blah blah, and she you know, she was like sexy without even trying. And the woman who played it in the Mexican production, who is actually not Mexican, she's actually Argentinian, but that's besides the point. I feel like she tried too hard to make Mimi sexy. Maybe that's just the way that she is, but I don't know. I just thought that it was a little too much. Anyway, I was loving the adaptation. Like, the translation was so good, and the cast was incredibly talented. I will leave a link to the recording of Take Me or Leave Me. Oh my goodness, what the heck is up with that kind of talent? Can you imagine being that talented? I can't. The guy who played Jesse, also very white, but he was so talented. So I was very judgy about the production because obviously there was a substantial lack of color, and I didn't necessarily question the talent, but I just went in there like being like, meh, you know, this is not what Rent is supposed to be about. Meh. I do think that the point of Rent is to celebrate different races and different sexual identities and that sort of intersectionality, which is part of the complicated feelings that I have with Rent, because I fell in love with the Mexican cast and they just led me to a whole lot of talent. So yeah, those are my feelings on Rent. It's a musical. It's a rock musical with a lot of fun songs. I don't love the characters, I don't love the story, which is weird to say, and the Mexican production left me even more confused as to where I stand with Rent because of how poorly the racial diversity was handled. But it led me to finding out so many Mexican theater actors. It led me to find just, you know, the deep flaws that the Mexican theater has because of its lack of diversity. It's just a very complicated thing that I have for Rent, and I realize that this video doesn't make a lot of sense, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. It's kind of like a piece of me in the theater, and how I see theater and approach theater and how I appreciate theater, which I think is a lot. Because that, I don't think that's the point of Rent exactly. Let me know down below if you've seen Rent, what you think of it, if you like it, if you don't like it, if you are like meh about Rent as a whole, if you think it's a little bit overhyped, if you think it does not stand the test of time, and if you haven't already and you'd like to, go ahead and hit subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!